It doesn't begin with explosions. It begins with something worse. At 317 UTC, every major orbital tracking network sees the same anomaly. An object appears in near-Earth space, too large to be debris, too steady to be a comet, too clean to be a natural rock. It isn't accelerating. It isn't orbiting like anything we've cataloged. It's simply present, as if someone placed it there and locked it in position. Within minutes, civilian satellites pivot. Military sensors go dark. Air forces scramble aircraft that have nowhere to go. Every nation runs the same calculation. If this is a weapon, we are already late. If it's a test, we don't know the rules. Then the second anomaly hits. Not a broadcast, not a radio signal, not a frequency you can jam. A message appears simultaneously in the internal systems of major data centers across the world. Servers that were never connected to the open internet display the same text. Phones in Faraday rooms light up. Old machines with no network connection print a line of characters like someone is typing through reality itself. And the most chilling part, it's perfectly translated. Every language, every dialect, no errors, no awkward phrasing. Like whoever wrote it understands humans better than humans understand themselves. One sentence appears, and it doesn't sound angry. It doesn't sound emotional. It sounds like a lab instruction. Complete this task or your species will be erased. No countdown, no further explanation, no demand for surrender, no list of conditions, just a task. Implied to be possible and therefore mandatory. For the first time in modern history, humanity experiences a new emotion, not fear of death. Fear of being deleted, like a file that never mattered. And instantly, the world splits into two kinds of people, those who assume it's a bluff and those who understand the real terror. If something can deliver a message into sealed machines, it can do far worse than invade. It can rewrite the rules of our planet without ever landing. And the question becomes unavoidable. If the aliens wanted to destroy us, they could have already done it. So why give us a task? Because this is not a war, it's an ultimatum, and whatever comes next will prove whether humanity is a species or just a collection of competing tribes with matching DNA. The message spreads faster than the press can react. Governments try to contain it because every crisis begins with the same instinct: control the story. But this time the story is uncontrollable. The sentence appears in leaked screenshots, then on live streams, then on billboards hacked by people who don't even understand how they did it. Within an hour, the world knows, and then the aliens clarify the task. Not with a long speech, not with a list, with a structure that feels like it was designed to expose our weaknesses. The demand is simple. Humanity must deliver one unified response. One coordinated action, one decision. Not most countries, not a coalition, not the United Nations. All of us, every major power, every nuclear state, every regional rival, every system that can disrupt global coordination must either comply or be neutralized by our own agreement. And this is where it becomes impossible. Because we've never done this before. Not even when it mattered. Not during pandemics. Not during climate crises. Not when nuclear war nearly happened by accident. We've built global supply chains, but not global trust. We've connected the planet, but we still operate like hostile neighborhoods sharing one street. The task doesn't require advanced technology. It requires something more rare. Shared legitimacy. Who speaks for humanity? A council, a vote, a consensus, a random lottery. If one nation refuses, do we force them? If we force them, are we still unified, or are we just a planet under internal occupation? And then the psychological pressure hits, because the demand isn't do your best, it's do it perfectly. One fracture is failure. One faction is failure. One hidden agenda is failure. Suddenly, every old conflict becomes lethal because now an argument isn't just politics. It's a potential extinction event. Some people interpret the task as a trap. If we unify, we become predictable. If we become predictable, we become controllable. Maybe the aliens don't want to erase us. Maybe they want to domesticate us. Others argue the opposite. This is the only chance humanity ever gets to evolve beyond tribalism, a forced upgrade. And somewhere in the middle is the most realistic truth. The aliens didn't choose a task that tests our weapons. They chose a task that tests our coordination. Because any species can invent technology, but only a mature species can use it without destroying itself. The task isn't build a machine, it's become one. The first global reaction is not unity, it's denial, because denial buys time, and time is the currency of power. Some leaders claim it's a hoax, not because they believe that, but because admitting the truth means admitting weakness. If the public sees you as powerless, you lose control, and in politics, losing control can be more frightening than extinction. Behind closed doors, intelligence agencies do what they always do. They hunt for a human explanation. Is it a rival nation? A secret weapon? A coordinated cyber event? Because if it's human, it can be beaten. If it's alien, the entire hierarchy collapses. Militaries go to maximum readiness. Nuclear submarines receive coded messages that haven't been used in decades. Air defense systems light up and track nothing they can lock onto. Financial markets react like living organisms. Panic spreads. Supply chains freeze. People buy fuel, food, medicine, as if prepping for war, but the war isn't visible. And that invisibility creates paranoia. Conspiracy movements explode overnight, each one claiming certainty. It's a false flag. It's demons. It's salvation. It's a test from God. It's the end. In reality, most people aren't looking for truth. They're looking for a story that reduces fear. Then the second phase begins, leverage. If the task demands global unity, whoever controls the process controls the future. So nations begin negotiating not with aliens, but with each other. Who gets to speak? Who gets veto power? Who commands enforcement? And this is where the task becomes a mirror, because we realize something humiliating. We might not lose to aliens. We might lose to ourselves. Even now, some leaders try to hide information. Some try to spin the message into domestic advantage. Some assume they can bargain privately, offer secret cooperation, trade resources, trade positions. But every attempt to outsmart the situation creates the same result: more division. And division is exactly what the task punishes. The most dangerous idea appears in public conversation. Maybe they're bluffing. It's a comforting thought. It's also the fastest path to extinction. Because if you gamble and lose, you don't get a rematch. And humanity loves gambles, especially when the cost is shared. This is the ugly truth of our species. We can unite under shared profit, but under shared fear, we usually choose blame first. Still, denial doesn't last forever, because the aliens don't need to shout. They just need to wait until we understand that this is not a negotiation between equals. While politicians fight for narrative, scientists do something different. They measure. And measurements reveal the most terrifying conclusion of all. This intelligence is not operating by our constraints. The object in orbit doesn't emit heat the way our engines would. It doesn't communicate on frequencies we can track. Its mass signature is inconsistent, almost like it can change what it is depending on how you observe it. Then the message itself becomes evidence. It penetrated isolated systems. That means either physics we don't understand or control over our infrastructure so deep that security is meaningless. Scientists form the first real strategy. Stop thinking about invasion. Start thinking about evaluation. If the aliens wanted resources, they'd take them. If they wanted territory, they'd land. If they wanted servants, they'd demand obedience. Instead, they demand coordination. That implies one thing. They're testing whether humanity can behave like a single agent, but the science community quickly collides with political reality, because the correct answer is not purely technical, it's social. How do you enforce global compliance without starting global war? How do you ensure transparency when every nation fears being exploited? How do you create legitimacy that people accept across cultures? In other words, we built machines before we built unity. Now scientists propose uncomfortable solutions. A temporary global emergency authority, shared oversight of nuclear arsenals, a unified communications protocol, a transparent auditable decision process, open to public verification, and immediately the world panics. Because every proposal sounds like the beginning of a global dictatorship, which creates a paradox. To survive, we may need global coordination, but to coordinate, we may need shared power. And shared power is the thing humans fear almost as much as extinction. This is where the task becomes psychologically cruel. It forces humanity to confront a question we've avoided for centuries. Are we willing to trade sovereignty for survival? Scientists don't care about flags. They care about outcomes. Politicians care about outcomes and power. And that gap, the gap between truth and control, becomes the battlefield. Not against aliens, against our own instincts. Because even if we discover the perfect strategy, it still must pass through human fear, pride, and mistrust. And that's the real reason the task is impossible. It demands that we coordinate at a level we have never practiced except in small tribes. Which is ironic, because maybe the aliens aren't asking us to evolve forward. Maybe they're asking us to evolve back, to remember how to act like one group when survival is on the line. When you hear one impossible task, you imagine something like build a Dyson sphere, cure death, terraform Mars overnight. But that's not how advanced intelligence tests a species. A real test doesn't measure what you can build. It measures what you can choose. So the alien task likely falls into one of three categories, each impossible for a different reason. First, a moral sacrifice, something that forces humanity to pick a value and pay a price. For example, destroy all nuclear weapons, not negotiate reductions, destroy all of them, verified, irreversible. That's technologically easy. It's psychologically catastrophic, because some nations would fear invasion, some would fear betrayal, some would refuse on principle. And if the task is all or nothing, one refusal dooms everyone. Second, a structural change, something that permanently changes how civilization functions. For example, dismantle the ability to wage large-scale war. That could mean rewriting supply chains, limiting certain technologies, restricting resource flows. Again, possible, but it threatens power structures that have ruled Earth since the First Empire. Third, proof of long-term intelligence, something that shows we can think beyond immediate profit and tribal identity. For example, create a unified global decision protocol with transparent verification, or agree on a single set of species-level priorities for the next 100 years. Not a promise, a mechanism. This is where humanity collapses most often, because we can cooperate when the reward is immediate. We can cooperate when the enemy is visible, but long-term cooperation requires faith, and humans don't like faith unless it benefits their tribe first. Here's the brutal part. Any of these tasks would expose our real limit. Not engineering, not science, trust. Because the truth is, humanity already has enough technology to destroy itself 10 times over. If aliens wanted to know whether we're worth letting into a larger cosmic community, they wouldn't ask for a device. They'd ask whether we can be trusted with our own devices. And a truly intelligent species would understand this. If you can't cooperate with your own kind, you become a threat to everyone else. So the impossible task isn't impossible because it violates physics. It's impossible because it violates what humans are used to being. To predict what humanity would do, you don't need science fiction. You need history. Because global crises have patterns, almost like a script we keep repeating. Phases 1, denial. We always start by arguing about whether the problem is real, because admitting the problem means admitting responsibility, and responsibility is expensive. Phase 2, fragmentation. Nations protect themselves first. Corporations protect profits. Groups protect identity. Everyone says we're in this together, while acting like they're alone. Phase 3, delayed coordination. Only when the cost becomes undeniable do we cooperate, and even then, cooperation is temporary. It lasts just long enough to reduce danger. Then the old conflicts return. We saw this with pandemics. The world coordinated until it got tired. We saw this with climate. The world agreed it mattered, then continued as usual. We saw this with nuclear treaties. We reduced risk, then built new risks in different shapes. The aliens would instantly understand this about us, so their task is designed to bypass our usual cycle. It's forcing phase 3 immediately, before denial and fragmentation can consume the time window. But the problem is humans don't become cooperative just because cooperation is logical. We become cooperative when the alternative is emotionally unbearable. And even then, cooperation doesn't mean trust. It means fear with paperwork. So the real question becomes, can we build a global system that doesn't rely on love, morality, or hope? Because those are unreliable. A mature civilization builds coordination mechanisms that function even when people are selfish. The way traffic lights work, even when drivers are impatient. The way banks work, even when people are greedy. The way airlines work, even when passengers panic. If the aliens are testing us, they're not asking, "Are you good?" And they're asking, can you build a system that prevents your worst instincts from becoming fatal? And that's the hardest engineering problem on Earth. Not a machine problem, a human problem. So what would happen in reality? Humanity would not instantly unite, but humanity also wouldn't instantly collapse. The most likely outcome is something ugly, temporary, and effective. Emergency unity. Not because we became enlightened, because extinction is persuasive. First, the world would create a joint crisis command structure. Maybe under the UN, maybe outside it, but it would be operational, not symbolic. A small group with real authority over specific systems, communications, verification, and escalation control. Second, we'd do what we always do under fear. We'd centralize. Satellite networks aligned into one monitoring grid, global broadcast protocols standardized, financial systems temporarily frozen to prevent chaos, borders tightened, not to attack but to reduce destabilization. Third, enforcement becomes the nightmare, because if the aliens demand everyone, then one rogue actor can doom the planet. So the question becomes, how far will humanity go to force compliance? Will nations threaten each other to cooperate? Will global forces move against internal holdouts? Will we accept surveillance, audits, and control we would reject in normal times? And this is where the alien test becomes evil genius, because either outcome reveals something. If we fail to coordinate, we prove we're not mature. If we coordinate through coercion, we prove we're dangerous. So the successful version has to thread a needle. We must coordinate strongly enough to act as one species, but transparently enough that no one can hijack the process. That means public verification, open auditing, and clear limits. A system that cannot be quietly captured by one nation, one ideology, or one corporation. Will we build that under time pressure? Maybe, but only because the alternative is extinction. And even then, unity won't feel like peace. It will feel like holding your breath together in the dark, hoping the rules don't change. If aliens ever demand one impossible task, it won't be about them. It will be about us. Because the moment you strip away technology, politics, and ego, you find the core problem of humanity. We are brilliant individually. We are dangerous collectively. We can build rockets and microchips, but we still argue like tribes fighting over water. So the alien ultimatum forces a final question. Are we a species, or just a temporary alliance of rival groups living on the same rock? If the task is unity, then unity becomes the true measure of intelligence. Not IQ, not invention, not raw power. The ability to coordinate without self-destruction. And maybe that's the real filter in the universe. Maybe civilizations don't get wiped out by asteroids or supernovas. Maybe most of them fail the same way. They become powerful before they become cooperative. They build tools faster than they build trust. They expand capability faster than they expand responsibility. So the aliens don't need to invade. They just ask one question that exposes everything. Can you act as one, even when it hurts? And now the story turns back to the viewer. If survival required humanity to give up something real, privacy, sovereignty, comfort, weapons, borders, profit, what would you be willing to sacrifice? Because that's what an impossible task really is. Not a challenge of physics, a challenge of identity. And whatever answer we give, success or failure, would be the clearest statement humanity ever makes to the universe. Either we are ready or we are not.